Welcome to Perfectly Paranormal, episode 18. My name's Annaschmidt, and I'm here every week to share with you true paranormal encounters and information about devils, demons, and dark energy beings that no one else talks about. And today I have an interview for you with a fellow paranormal enthusiast, Dan Volk, from Dan the Paraman podcast. And Dan's here today to share his knowledge and his information about the paranormal and his experiences. He's going to talk about the imprint in the bed, the glowing green eyes, dimensional doorways, EVPs, and how he got into paranormal investigation. Also his inspiration in making his podcast, Dan the Paraman. And make sure you stay right till the end to hear Dan's tale of the child spirit in the basement, an experience he will never forget. So hello, Dan. It is absolutely wonderful to be connecting with you today. You're the first paranormal enthusiast that I've interviewed, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation today.
Yes, so am I.
So, Dan, what got you interested in the paranormal? Has it been a lifelong interest, or was there an event or something that happened that actually piqued your interest?
Honestly, when I was a teenager, I was watching like ghost hunters and ghost adventures and stuff like that on TV, and it was just interesting to me. And then I started having my own encounters. My mom had gotten with my stepdad, and we moved in with them, and I ended up having a very odd encounter at what was his childhood home that we lived in. And his brother had passed away about 10 years before that, and I had opened my bedroom door, which was the boys' room when they were younger, and I saw the outline of a person sitting on the edge of my bed.
Wow.
I didn't have the bedroom lights on or anything, so when I did turn the lights on, I saw the imprint in the mattress, but the outline was gone. And that was kind of my first encounter, and it just sparked my interest from there. I mean, being 12, 13 years old, it was definitely freaky at first, but creepy in a good way, like interesting. And it just drugged me right into it.
So what was going on in your mind at that time when you saw that imprint on the bed? What were you thinking?
Who are you? And what are you doing in my room? And I mean, it was kind of surreal, hard to believe, and just, I mean, being the first ever encounter, it was out of the ordinary. It caught me off guard.
How did you sleep that night?
I think good. I don't remember. I didn't normally have any issues sleeping, so I guess it never felt like any evil presence.
Yeah, because quite often spirits don't tend to be malevolent. They're not there for other reasons. They're generally just visiting people or visiting places. Or they might have seen that you had a bit of an interest in the paranormal. I talk to people about it as they can read our energy. They know what we're thinking. They know what our interests are.
Right.
So that's really interesting. So from that age of 12, did you have any more experiences as a teenager?
Yeah, I had a lot of experiences. A few more in that house. I had a very odd one actually on the property. It started in the property and then it ended up in the house. I was 16 and I had gotten off of work early. I talked about this in the first episode of my podcast. And I had gone out to the mall with some friends of mine. And on my way home, I saw what looked like a UFO in the sky over top of the area of where our house was. And I didn't think anything of it. I pulled in the driveway, and realized that I had forgotten to do some of my chores outside. So I ran outside real quick. Now it's dark and I've just got the light of the moon and the few street lights around. And when I had stepped inside the garage I think I was feeding the dog. When I stepped out, I saw this 7.5, 8 foot tall cloaked figure, and it had glowing green eyes.
Wow.
I couldn't explain it. So I had gone and fed the dog and took the canister back to the garage. And when I stepped out of the garage, I was face to face with it, whatever it was. And it scared me. I ran around the house, up inside the house, and I was telling my parents about it. And they're like, no, you're hallucinating. You're seeing something that your imagination is just overpowering you. And I had my mom step aside with me because she believed me more so than my stepdad did. And I was explaining it to her, and I said, listen, just come look out the window into the backyard and I'll prove to you. Well, there was nothing there. And it was about 30 seconds or so later, I'm talking to her and I can see out the window. She's looking at me, and I just stopped because I was looking face to face, like eye to eye with the creature. And I told her, I said, well, turn around. And when she did, she saw it. She goes, and we're not going to discuss this anymore.
What an amazing story. And why do you think that these beings show themselves to you?
I think it's because I allow them the access to my energy or my imagination or whichever it is. And most people, they're just like, oh, that stuff doesn't exist. As I've gotten older and more into the paranormal field, I have gained the feeling of energy. Like I can feel energy more. So I don't know if that was like my first bout of it and it just escalated from there, but I don't know. It was very strange. It was probably the number one most intense encounter I ever had.
It sounds pretty memorable. So you talked about the 7 or 8 foot tall figure with the green eyes. Is there anything else that you can tell us about at that age, sort of what it felt like? Did it remind you of something? Have you maybe read about or maybe you've seen something like that in the movies? Or was it just so totally out there that you've never seen anything like that anywhere else?
You know, honestly, the only thing I had ever at that age with like extraterrestrials or alien life or anything like that was E.T., the movie, Steven Spielberg's E.T. And I think I had watched one of a spoof movies about aliens. It's just a comedy movie, but I didn't have any knowledge of them other than that. The feeling was absolutely weird. Like when you go outside at night, you can hear like the bullfrogs croaking and all the sounds of nature, and I couldn't hear anything. Like as soon as I saw that figure, it was just like still. No noise, no air movement, nothing. It was very ominous.
It sounds a little bit like a multi-dimensional meeting.
Yeah, that's a good way to explain it.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
because to me, working with the paranormal all the time, I'm always fascinated by other people's opinions and their experiences, and thinking about visualizing that experience as you're talking about it, and about there being no sound, no human sounds, no animal sounds. It sounds almost like you were given access, almost maybe to a doorway where that being may have been standing in
right,
another dimension, and
right.
you
That
were
makes
seeing
sense.
it.
It was like a portal almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, fascinating. Fascinating. Have any of your other family members, because we know now that your mum has had that experience with you at that time at the window, any of your other family members, what are their perceptions about the paranormal? Because it can be hard when family member like yourself or myself has this really serious interest in the paranormal. Sometimes the family don't carry that same interest.
Right. I do remember My dad had told me a story from when I was a baby, and him and my mom were still married, and he had gotten home from work one night and walked into their mobile home, and there was an entity floating in the hallway staring at him. He didn't know what to think of it or anything, but my dad, he kind of shares the same like energy feelings that I do towards things. He believes in the paranormal. He believes in aliens and Bigfoot and all the stuff that makes life interesting. My stepdad's he kind of holds back. He's had a few experiences with his brother who passed away, but he doesn't talk about them. Like he pretends that it didn't exist or it was just a figment of his imagination or whatever. I know my mom's had a few experiences too with her parents being gone. I think I'm the only person in the family who expresses such a vast knowledge of it or uh, fascination with it.
So, how does it make you feel when people don't believe you? Because it can be challenging actually talking about these. As you get older, you kind of get used to it and you like to see the looks on their faces. But when you're younger, and especially family members, how do you sort of feel when you're explaining your experiences?
It's kind of 50-50. Some people are like, wow, really? And then the other ones are just like, no, you have a really good imagination. There's been a few that just want to sit there and like argue with me, tell me, oh, well, this doesn't exist. It can't exist. It's not real. You can't see it. Like, just because you can't see something doesn't mean that it doesn't exist.
So, Dan, when did you pique your interest in getting equipment and expanding your knowledge even further?
I was in high school. An old friend of mine introduced me to one of his neighbors, and we hit it off. We became best friends. We consider each other brothers now. And his fascination with paranormal was right up there, same as mine. I had gotten a digital camera for Christmas that year, and he had a voice recorder. And I mean, flashlights are a dime a dozen, so we had those on hand. But that's all we had for equipment right off the bat. And we took our last names and merged them together and started our small little paranormal team. And we started out doing cemeteries and abandoned farmhouses and stuff like that. It was really no planning to it. It was just kind of happened. And he lives out of state and he's still got the team going, but he's got the Ohio division going and I've got the Michigan division going.
That's great. That's absolutely wonderful. So, when you do your paranormal investigations, how do you choose the locations?
A lot of it's just hearsay. We've reached out to a few different places that we've heard that are highly active. Like we know of other teams who have gone in there and had encounters and got good evidence. But most of it's just we drive around and look for like a place that gives us a creepy feeling or that weird energy mass just hits us. And normally that's when we just jump out of the car and start investigating. There have been a few instances. We grew up in an area where there was a lot of bad activity back in the day, like murders and suicides and stuff like that. So we just go to those locations and we reach out and see what we can see or hear.
Do you ever find after your investigations that you actually have paranormal beings following you home?
Yeah, yep. I kind of get like the hair on the back of my neck starts to stand up like after we get in the vehicle or whatever as we're getting ready to leave. If I get that feeling, I just look at my buddy and I'm like, we got to get out and take care of this before we leave. Like we got to settle this and just let it calm down. There was one encounter. I had joined up with another one of our mutual friends and he had his own team as well that he was starting. So we kind of merged together and it was myself and my brother, my best friend. And this other guy, and we had gone to a location with his team. There was speculation of satanic rituals and dark energy and all sorts of different things. And one of the other team members had actually had an encounter with a dark entity, and her eyes completely glazed over black. She had, you could tell, 15, 16-year-old girl, you can tell what her voice sounds like. And it was like this real growly, deep man's voice coming out of her. We kind of hightailed it out of there. They went off in one vehicle and they were talking to us through cell phones. They drove her right to their friend's house, who helps to relieve that dark energy from a person. That was my only encounter with that, and quite quite scary when you're not expecting it. But yeah, other than that, I haven't had anything too horrible try to follow me home. I tend to go to like antique stores and pick up an old piece of furniture, or like something that might have that energy stuck to it from somebody else. And then I start to notice some extra energy happening around our house. So, they're welcome. As long as they don't try and scare me.
Yeah, you were saying that when you're getting in the truck and the hairs on the back of your neck are standing up and you look at your mate and you're like, we need to do something about this. So if you do feel that is happening, or you start to drive off and you start to feel a bit unwell, is there something that you say or do to let these paranormal beings know that they can't come home with you?
Oh, I want to say the one time that we actually, like, we had to sit and have like a debate with the spirit, because it wasn't listening. So what we had done, we had turned around and went back to the location that we were at, and we both got out and we just sat on the tailgate and we were talking. We're like, listen, this is your home and we're trying to go to our home. You're not necessarily bothering us, but we don't want to take you home to be stuck with us. We did our best. We said a few prayers and we did our best to try and help that spirit along their journey, whether it was to actually pass on all the way or just be okay with staying where they were. And after, I want to say it was probably half hour to an hour before like the weird energy feeling just went away. But I don't know. I felt like I was accomplished when I was able to get a spirit to listen to me.
Yeah, nice. That's great. So were your life experiences the catalyst for starting Dan the Paraman podcast?
I'm a truck driver, so I like to sit and talk. And
Nice.
I like to tell my stories, and I like to tell my experiences and everything to my friends and everything. Every night at work, I'm talking to like 6 or 7 different guys on the phone in a Discord group that we've got. And it's trying to get everybody to stay quiet and listen to you. It's like it's not the easiest thing in the world. Everybody has their own opinions, everybody has something else that they want to say. So with me trying to like tell my stories, tell my experiences, my beliefs, it's very difficult. And for about a year or so now, I've wanted to start a podcast. I've been listening to a bunch of different ones, and there's a few that I favor, and there's a few that like they just don't sound right, or well, we're not gonna do that when I start mine. And I just started taking like tips and tricks from everybody else, and I just kind of joined them together. I was telling my wife, I said, I really want to start this podcast, but I'm torn between 2 different topics. I said, I got this topic that I absolutely love of being the paranormal. And I've got this, I'm a 90s baby. So I love the nostalgia and like the old TV shows and the music. And I just kind of want to do like a 90s podcast as well. And she's like, well, what one do you feel like is like the strongest one in your heart? And I'm like, well, that's paranormal. And I don't think starting the podcast was the hardest part. It was figuring out the name. There's a furniture store a few miles away from us, and the guy who started it, his name's Dan, and it's called Dan the Mattress Man. All right, well, I think I can take a little bit of your imagination and spin it to work for me. And I was driving down the highway one night at work, and I'm like, Dan's paranormal, and I'm just like tossing ideas around, and all of a sudden, Dan the Paraman came out. I was like, that's it. That's the title. And it was starting the episodes, nerves. I don't like public speaking. I don't like being up in front of people. I am my biggest critic. And I recorded my first episode. I stumbled over every other word that I had wrote down, and I just ended up deleting everything and starting over again. And I was like, listen, there's only one way to do this, and it's to record it. Whether it's good or not, it doesn't matter. It's your first episode. It took me like 3 days to edit it. I had no editing background at all.
I'm
And I was
hearing
just
you.
going, yeah, I was just going off the few videos from Buzzsprout that I had watched on YouTube. I don't know. I did as much as I could, and it sounded halfway decent. And then I recorded the intro, and I found the perfect music for it, and that like lit my fire a little bit more and kind of pushed me further. So yeah, it's different. It's out of my wheelhouse, but 8 episodes down, and I'm working on the ninth one, and it's going smooth now.
That's great. That's great. And I love it because I don't know a lot about the American folklore around
Okay. Yep.
paranormal beings. So I really like listening to your podcast. I find it really, really, it's entertaining, but it's informative as well. And because I have that paranormal piqued interest. One thing I did want to ask you was when you're out and you're in a location and you've said you've got that spidey sense thing happening when we need to go and check out this farmhouse. It's public property. We're allowed on that property. In we go. Where do you go from there? You've got your equipment. How do you know which room to go in, where to go, what to look at? Tell us about how you use that intuitive sense you have for the paranormal.
Honestly, a lot of it is just like, well, trial and error. We go in and we'll start in one room. It doesn't work out, so we'll move to the next room. Or there were a few times we walked into a place or a property, and like that spidey sense just took over, and it's like, hey, I'm over here, I'm over here. And yeah, it's different with every location. A lot of the locations that we have gone to are out in nature, public property. Not gonna say that we haven't crossed the line into private property, but
Okay, we don't need to know the locations.
no. Yeah, a lot of it feelings. Like he's got a strong sense of like energy that he feels. Like it doesn't matter where he goes, he feels energy. We tend to have decent experiences wherever we go.
Nice, nice. And as you're talking about going into the buildings, I'm envisaging you and your friend. Do you ever explore the land or go into, I'm not saying going into like old mines, anywhere where it's dangerous, but do you explore unusual places other than your standard home or old, dilapidated, abandoned buildings?
There was one instance I was with my other buddy who had his team, and we were just out driving around one night, and we had taken kind of like a scenic route detour off of the main road. I was driving an old rust bucket of a truck. I had pulled off on this 2-track, just going back through the woods, the swamp land, the marshes, and we came up to, it was probably 15 minutes driving down this 2-track. We didn't know where we were. And we came up to this massive tree. Like, we're in Michigan. These trees don't exist here. This thing was probably the length of my truck in diameter. So
Wow.
18 feet in diameter. And I just looked at my buddy and I'm like, did we fall down the rabbit hole in Alice in Wonderland? Like, where are we at? And when we had turned off the road, it was like 10 o'clock at night. And we're just kids out on an off school night, just cruising the roads. And 10 o'clock, we pull off this 2-track. We're only down there for half hour, 45 minutes, whatever. We found a place to turn around. When we got back out to the main road, it wasn't even the same road that we drove off of.
Wow.
We were 45 miles away from where we were. And while looking down at the dash at the odometer, I had only driven 6 miles. And it was 7 o'clock in the morning. So I don't know if we hit one of those interdimensional like time lapses or like portal, black hole, or if we were just like sleep deprived. I don't know. I can't explain it. But we did a lot of investigating while we were down in there, not necessarily with the paranormal, but just like the area where that tree was. Like we had gotten out, and the tree was odd
Yep.
for its size, its mass, the height of it was just off for the state of Michigan. And the surrounding area was just off. So that's why I kind of asked him, I'm like, did we fall down the rabbit hole? Like, no, this doesn't, one of these things just doesn't belong here. And just talking about it, I can picture the whole thing. I don't know. It was very odd, very strange. And ever since that day, we've never been able to find that location again. So I don't know. I can't explain it. I know what I saw, I know what I experienced, but I can't explain it.
Sounds like another interdimensional doorway opened, like you stepped into another place. How
Yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah, like we walked through the curtain. I don't know why I have the ability or the like the invitation to experience that. It's definitely a once in a lifetime experience, and I wouldn't mind experiencing it again, but at the same time, I don't think I'm ready because what happens if you step across that line and you can't come back? Like that portal closes or the time frame just jumps or whatever. So because of that, I tend to like pull myself back. I tend to stay a little bit more reserved to myself and my thoughts and my beliefs and try to stay away from possibilities like that because I don't know what's going to happen.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. Now, you mentioned earlier on that you used to explore cemeteries. Do you have any interesting cemetery stories to share with us?
Oh. I wish I had the picture. It was that same digital camera I had gotten when I was 16 or 17 for a Christmas present. The one cemetery, it was right like one of the main roads that connects the city that we lived in with the next city over. It was right on the side of it. So it's not like you're going in there and everything's hush hush and you'll be able to hear a twig break. And we were just out having fun. I was taking a few pictures of the gravestones, and I very much love like old like architecture, like Gothic, like mid-century stuff. I take pictures of like the headstones that have the detail. And I had turned and I took a picture, and like as soon as I took the picture, like an instant cold spot. It's middle of the summer. It's 90 degrees and it's 1 o'clock in the morning. And I hit like a 40-degree drop. It doesn't make any sense. So I had looked over at my buddy, and he was 100 feet or so away from me, and I hollered for him to come back. I was like, "You got your temperature gun?" I said, shoot around me, see what you're picking up." And it was like legit 40 degrees colder, just randomly in the center of the cemetery. Made no sense at all. And he goes like, "What did you notice, or what were you doing right before you noticed this cold spot?" I was like, "I took a picture." He goes, "Of what?" I said, "Well, the tree in the background and then like the Gothic type architecture that was on the headstone. And he's like, well, give me your camera. And he's scrolling back through the pictures. And I think the best way I have to describe what it looked like is like the hose, the dryer hose to the exhaust from your dryer to like going out the house, that kind of spiral. It was a vortex that I had caught. And I had spoke with another paranormal research group a few weeks later, and they were like, essentially what a vortex is a fast moving orb. And they said you don't hardly catch them on camera just because they're moving so fast. So it's whatever you were doing, wherever you were at, there was somebody there who wanted to make their presence known. And I was like, well, that's kind of cool. I want to go back now. Haven't had any other experience there. It was awesome. Just having that picture to be like, see, this is proof. Like, there was no smoke. It wasn't cold, so you couldn't see our breath. I did have like a little lanyard hooked to the camera, but it hung down, and I had taken a picture of that to trying to debunk it, and it didn't look the same. So I don't know. Just one cool little experience of a cemetery. I had some really creepy experiences, just hearing weird things. Having an old gravelly voice yell at me, "Get out of here, you don't belong here." You got it, dude. But yeah, it's just, I don't know. I guess I just pick good cemeteries to investigate.
Well, maybe the spirits and the energy beings are drawn to you because they see that you're not afraid of them, that you have an interest in them, that you actually acknowledge them. So you're giving them that acknowledgement.
Well, that makes sense.
Really nice. It's nice.
You know, I didn't even think about that. I mean, I don't like confrontation. I try and get along with everybody. So yeah, that makes sense.
It's the same with the living and the non-living. If
Right,
you want to
right.
look at it that way.
Honestly, I think I'd rather interact with the non-living than the living sometimes.
Yes, I'm a little bit like that too, because I live a very paranormal lifestyle. It's fascinating. I just find that I can't move away from it now. It's just something that fully envelops my thinking, my work, my podcast. It's just, I just love it, and we're all teaching each other new things.
Right, right. Absolutely.
And spreading the word and making it real. Like what you have shared today about these portals, I've not had very many portal experiences, but I actually felt like I was there with you as you were describing them. I'm like, I'm seeing the tree and I'm like, wow, this is magic, absolute magic.
Right. I wish I wish I could draw it. I can draw some things and get the detail. It's just I don't have the patience, I guess, to actually sit and draw everything out. If I could do that and somehow make it look exactly like it did that night, I don't even know if I'd believe it if I saw it, the drawing. That was a very vivid experience in my life, and like I said earlier, I could see it as I was retelling the story.
I 100% believe you, because as human beings, we don't know very much about the reality that we live in. Really and truly, other than all the tangible material things that are around us, a lot of people don't believe beyond that. And what people
Right.
like you and me and other paranormal investigators and researchers and people who share the information, we're actually opening people's minds up to think about the other aspects of reality that
Right,
is around us.
absolutely.
Because I'm like you, I'm a storyteller. I just can't help myself. People ask me about the paranormal, I'll give them like the answer to their question, and then I'm like, oh, have you got time? I'd love to tell you this story.
Yep. That's how I am. Yep. I get asked like simple, like little yes or no questions or like quick answer questions, and it takes me an hour and a half to answer it. So yeah.
I'm there with you on that. I did want to ask you, have you ever caught a voice through an EVP?
Oh, several times. Like, I don't even know how to narrow it down. That's like the number one thing for evidence that we get. And what I really want to invest in is like a really nice spirit box. I fell out of investigating for a few years, so I kind of just like tossed my equipment aside and it. So right now, all I've got is a small voice recorder and a temperature gun, and thankfully, I've got a really nice camera that's got night vision and video and picks up all sorts of different things. EVPs are like a dime a dozen for us. Sometimes it's just a little like a hum or an out of the ordinary noise. Other times it's like that gravelly guy at the cemetery. You don't belong here. It's just the spectrum is huge for those.
Yes, I have a spirit box. As you were just about to say that word, I was going to mention it to you. I don't do a lot of paranormal investigation now. Mine's very work-based, but a spirit box makes their voices tangible. And for a radio that's running backwards, there's no
Yep.
way that it can be a radio station.
Right. No, absolutely.
And I've
Yeah.
had it on my kitchen table because I get a lot of, my house is a bit like a halfway house. They're always coming and going. Spirits are in and out all the time. And I'll put the spirit box on sometimes while I'm working. And it's like listening in. It's like eavesdropping on other people's conversations. It's so
Right.
funny. And I don't think they know that you're actually listening. Sometimes it's words. Sometimes you might hear like a name or occasionally you'll get a sentence. I used to connect with an old site that's here in Tasmania that was a mental health institution back to
Wow.
convict time. But there were convict that were at this location that are still there now in 2023 that were there mid 1800s. And quite
Wow.
often they'd come and talk to me through the spirit box because they know I'm like you. I've got that spidey, that radar, that paranormal radar is out there where they just know that you're interested in them. And there's a reason why I'm saying this is that I put the spirit box on one day to talk with a particular male voice. And just as I turned it on, I heard a voice as plain as day. It was a female voice, and she said, "He is working."
Wow.
I will never forget it because this young man's name was Adam, and he and we just had conversations. And I asked him, "May I ask you some questions about your time there, what you do?" Because quite often spirits, they'll share information. You're talking to them, you're chatting with them, you're giving them acknowledgement. And I always ask permission to ask questions. And it was so funny because this particular day, I didn't even get to talk to him. She said, "He is working." So it makes you wonder if spirits that are still in this reality are actually still in that loop of living the lifestyle that they did when they were alive. Have you ever had
Right.
any experiences where you've had spirits talk to you or you've actually seen situations in your mind or like your third eye, like you've seen those little movies when you've been out at places?
Actually, as you were telling me about that, I started recalling uh another investigation we were on. It was an old general store in Saginaw, Michigan. The current owner had turned it into like a Halloween haunted house, and they had called my other buddy who had the team. At this time, I had just merged in with him, and I was part of his team. They had called his team in to investigate, and there was the basement, there was the main floor, and the second floor, and a third floor, and then an attic. We never made it up to the attic. It was just an old brick building, and they had some encounters down in the basement area. The owners did, and some of the actors of the haunted house. And we were down in the basement doing some investigation, EVP work, and taking pictures here, a little snap picture here and a snap picture there. And his team had some decent equipment. They had infrared cameras and cameras up on tripods hooked to a DVR, a lot more than I could think about having at that time. I think they picked up a few things, like we had a ball with us because there was a lot of experiences. A lot of people had said that they had an experience with a younger child. So we had taken like some trigger objects with us. We had a ball and we had a teddy bear. And what we would do is we'd unscrew the end of our flashlight and make it to where if you just tap it, it would light up or turn off. And we'd sit down and have an EVP session with those trigger objects. Well, down in the basement, we got the ball to move a couple times. That was it. And me and one of the other team members, we had went to the clown room for the haunted house. Like, I don't mind clowns. I like scaring people who have fears of clowns, like my wife and my dad. But when it's dark and you're trapped in a room and you're surrounded by them, then it's too much. We were in the clown room, and I don't know if it's just that energy that I give off, that welcoming energy or whatever. We had an interaction with a 6 or 7 year old girl who thought it was still 1948 and it was her dad's hardware store. So she was still stuck in that time. And she had mentioned, like, we asked her, where are your parents? Do they know that you're here talking to us? And the flashlight would turn on. And then we had asked a question like, shouldn't you be at home? Or is there somebody coming to pick you up? And she had replied, I just got home from school. I'm waiting for my dad. I'm like, okay. Like, we heard some faint talking, but we couldn't pick it up through our ears, so we did a quick playback on the voice recorder, and we had picked that up. And I looked at my buddy, I was like, ah, that's cool. A little creepy, a little unsettling, but cool at the same time. I said, I wonder if like there's a way to help her out, or just get her to understand that it's no longer 1948. At that time, it was 2014. My buddy had mentioned, no, it's probably best not to mess with her thoughts and just let her go on with living her life. And we ended up doing some investigation into that little girl. She had passed away from a sickness at the hardware store, and that's why her energy was there. It was kind of a sad story once we found that out, but it was nice that she would only interact with the people who were in the room as long as I was in there.
So you've got that, I'm hearing in my head, you're a draw card. And it's
Mm,
always great to have someone like that on a paranormal investigation team. I feel like there's sympathy within you. There's empathy. As you were telling us about that young girl, I could feel the empathy coming from you about her situation and why she's there. Spirits feel that. I mean, they feel our energy. We're just energy in these physical bodies. So that's
right.
lovely that you can have those interactions with the spirits that are in our environment. Is
I
there
always
any?
knew there was something special about me.
I knew it. I knew it. I just knew it. I'm just so enjoying listening to you telling us about your experiences, about your podcast, about your life around the paranormal. Are there any other little interesting stories or little bits of information you want to give us before we finish today?
I don't know. I think we pretty much covered a lot. I haven't had much of anything lately. I don't know if it's just because my life is so busy to have any experiences or encounters lately. I want to take the time and actually go out with like a friend or two and sit down and do an investigation at a location and make that investigation an episode on my podcast. I love history and I love learning about haunted locations. That's why I add all that history into my episodes, and then I go into the fun stuff that everybody's there to listen to.
I was thinking maybe you could make it something that you do for you sort of once a month, because you're saying you're busy, you're working all the time, you've got the family, you've got the farm, you've got the truck driving, and we both know that podcasting takes up time.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it sure does.
So having
Yeah,
that time once a month where you can go, yeah, let's just make this once a month where I can have that. It gives you something to look forward to
right.
outside that daily routine.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely something I need to do. I've got some people in my support circle that actually like they're bugging me every single week. Hey, when are you going to come over? I want to sit down and have a drink with you and talk to you more about this. Like I've got experiences to tell you about and I've got ghost stories. And so yeah, I think I need to just jump right in and like you said, take that time once a month or maybe twice a month even, and
Yeah.
just sit back and actually do that one thing.
Wouldn't it be
Yeah,
fascinating for you to collect other people's stories? Just as you're telling us all the stories now, I'm just so enthralled to listen to them. People love the paranormal. You can collect their stories and to be able to share them
right.
along with
Absolutely.
your own experiences. I think that would be amazing to add to your podcast.
Yeah, that's definitely something I want to do for sure. Yeah,
You are amazing. You are so dedicated. And I really, really want to thank you for coming on Perfectly Paranormal today. It's been wonderful sharing and hearing about your stories. And I felt like I was actually there as you were telling them. Thank you so much, Dan.
absolutely. It's been a pleasure of mine, and honestly, I enjoyed every second of it.
So, in episode 19, we're talking paranormal addiction and how Betty's supernatural obsession was ruining her life. And I'm going to share with you what I term to be paranormal addiction, what it is, how it affects people, and what you can do about it. I have my own personal information to share, but also information that I've gained through client case studies. So thank you for joining me today. And if you want to share your paranormal experiences or you have a question, you can email me at spiritualbeing44@gmail.com. And for information on paranormal house clearing, you can visit my website. The web address is in the description box. And I look forward to sharing this spooky space again with you next week. And remember, life is perfectly paranormal.